The main name of this webinar today is basically the role of global grant community is tackling some of the grant funding challenges faced by organizations and how it aims to standardize, simplify, and strengthen governance in grant funding globally. My name is Edward Abira. I'll be your moderator for today, and I work as the program officer for global grant community at the African Academy of Sciences. We have a very experienced panel today, and starting us off is Jenny Keefe. She's the senior advisor to the African Academy of Sciences for the development of the global grant community good financial grant practice. And she has brought a wealth of experience in developing and capacity building finance functions of a variety of organizations in both the not-for-profit and commercial sectors. Since May 2019, she has been the CFO for the Oxford University Clinical Research Network based in Vietnam, where her role is to capacity build the financial functions of a number of organizations within that network. And next we have Winfred Mwasa. Winfred Mwasa is a program assistant with expertise and hands-on experience in digital project management and development of information systems as well. And Winfred is mainly responsible for handling the functionalities of the Global Grant Community Portal. In addition, she provides helpline support to the grantor and grantee community. And also she helps the funding community just go through the online assessment processes. And we also have Alex Nyaga, who is Associate Director at PwC, who has 15 years experience. And Alex is responsible for leading the team at PwC, who worked in collaboration the AAS and developing the good financial grant practice standard. And also he has a wide experience working throughout the wider East African network, and we're pleased to have him here today. And last but not least, we have Michael Legesse, who's operations officer at Mbale Clinical Research Institute from Uganda, and is responsible for leading the implementation of GFGP at his home institution. He has over 13 years experience working with for-profit and non-profit organizations, and 3 of those years have been at the Mbale Clinical Research Institute. So welcome everyone, we're very happy to have you here. So just to start us, I'm going to walk you briefly through the agenda. So the first item of the agenda is the opening remarks and introduction from myself. And at this point, I think I'll ask the presenters to switch off their cameras. Thank you. So the first session will be opening remarks and introduction and background of the AAS as well as the GGC. And after that, we'll have Jenny Keefe talking about grant funding overview and also problems and challenges that exist within the grant funding landscape. After that, we'll have also a session on overview of GGC, as well as how it's resolving the critical gaps in grant funding. Also as a role of GGC as the international standard for accountability and trust, role of GFGP, I beg your pardon. And we'll have a journey to GFGP certification that will be taken through by Alex Nyaga, Associate Director at PwC, and just talk about the journey to certification and also of getting certified. And we're very happy to have a grantee perspective from Michael Legesse, who's implementing GFGP within his home institution. We'll also have a session for portal demonstration by Winfred Mwasa, who is going to give us a look and feel of how the portal works, a live demonstration. We'll have that at a later stage of this webinar. And lastly, we'll have a Q&A session and closing remarks given by myself. Thank you very much. So just to start us off, I'm going to talk about what the global grant community is and the background and vision of GGC as well as the AAS. So the African Academy of Sciences is a non-aligned, non-political, not-for-profit Pan-African organization, and we pride ourselves as being the only continental academy in Africa with the support and recognition of the African Union. So our mandate covers 3 main areas. That's recognizing excellence, advisory and think tank functions, and lastly, implementing key science, technology, and innovation programs. And the ASS strategy plan 2018 through 22 focuses on key priority areas around people, excellence, and partnerships, and we really pride ourselves in that. And these are just some of the areas on your screen that we focus on as priority areas, including environmental and climate change, as well as policy and governance. In 2015, ISA platform was launched with the main aim of shifting the center of gravity of African science to Africa. And this is going to be achieved through the following goals. And that's the first one is building research and development leadership and ecosystems. And secondly, supporting the development of an innovation and science-driven entrepreneurial culture. Thirdly, identifying and also supporting rising research leaders. And it's very important for them to stay and build their careers within the African continent. And fourth, what we're going to focus on today is targeting the critical gaps that exist in the research and nonprofit landscape. And that's through the Global Grant Community platform. So what do we do as the GGC? Jenny Kiff will take you through this later on, but in summary, the Global Grant Community is a financial management platform developed by the AAS, and it uses this disruptive power technology. We're currently in a technological revolution, and we aim to digitize, standardize, and de-risk the due diligence process for both funders and grant receivers. Just before I continue, it's very important for me to discuss the relationship we have between PwC and the AAS. So it's very important, and congratulations to Alex on this. PwC is the first licensed certification body in Kenya for GFGP, and they also initiated the first GFGP certification in Africa just very recently. And as AAS, we're the GFGP certification scheme owner, and PwC has supported us in the last couple of years in the development of the GFGP standard. So very happy to have PwC here today. And AS and Mbale Clinical Research Institute also share a very good relationship, and Mbale is currently piloting GFGP in Uganda with their main aim to attain certification for their organization. So the vision for GFGP is really, with a strong uptake in 2020 and 2021, is to have it as an ISO standard in the next couple of years. And in time, every organization receiving or awarding funds will be required to be certified to GFGP. I'd like to now hand over to Jenny Kiff, who's going to take us through the grant funding landscape and briefly talk to us about the challenges that exist therein, and just an overview of the global grant community. Thank you. Welcome, Jenny.
Edward, thank you very much for both your introduction of us as panelists and also your excellent overview of the global grant community. Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's a pleasure and a privilege to present the GFGP to you today. And as Edward said, along with Michael Kilpatrick and myself, we've been involved in the development of the global grant community from the start. So in this presentation, this is all about building trust and accountability. So we're going to, first of all, just go through what is the problem, and then a look at the solution, which is the global grant community, and how do you build trusted partnerships through accountability and transparency. When it comes to grantors and grantees, it's an unequal partnership from the start. The grantors have the funding, and the grantees have the need, and they're the ones that deliver the outputs and the outcomes from the grant funding. With a lot of the grantors, their funding comes from their taxpayers within their own countries, and therefore they undertake a lot of due diligence. So for all of the grantors, they all undertake their own due diligence, and they do their own audits of organizations. There are some organizations in Africa that may have as many as 10 different auditors in 1 month coming in to audit more or less the same situations. We often hear of due diligence questionnaires being sent out that people just don't understand. But not only are the grantors doing due diligence on grantees, but where a grantor does funding through an intermediary, they do due diligence on each other and they audit each other. And sometimes grantees do audits on each other as well. So what is the outcome of all of that work? It's just hundreds of hours and lots of different people spending a lot of time filling in forms, answering similar questions, and very often getting a few confusing answers back from the auditors and from the funders. What is the elephant in the room? Why do the funders want to do that? As I mentioned earlier, a lot of their funding comes from taxpayers in their countries, and that all of them are worried about fraud and corruption on their funding. They want to be able to give grant funding, but fraud and corruption can make it a little bit less popular in those countries. A lot of the funding goes into countries with very high corruption indexes, so that is a concern for them. And therefore, the end result of all of that is that there is a one-way traffic between the grantor and the grantee. It's repetitive, it's fragmented, it's onerous, and it's very inefficient. And I'm sure that people on this call today would recognize those situations. I certainly feel it here in the network that I'm CFO for. So therefore, what is the solution? The solution is that we have to build trusted partnerships between the grantor and the grantee. And how does the global grant community help with that? First of all, it was developed in Africa, and it's there for the global grant community. This product, the Good Financial Grant Practice, developed in Africa, is applicable whether you're in Africa, whether you are in South America, whether you're in the UK or Europe. It's applicable on whatever country in the world. That's starting to build that equal partnership. It's applicable geographically. It's applicable to different sized organizations. It doesn't matter whether you're big or you're small. It's applicable to you. It's applicable to different sectors. It doesn't matter whether you're in the research, whether you're a humanitarian. And it's also applicable to organizations who are both grantees and grantors. And many of us receive funds and then make sub-awards. So it's a common global standard. It's the first trusted common global standard to do with good financial grant practice. What is it? As Edward mentioned earlier on, it is actually, we want to use the disruptive power of technology. And our aim is to simplify, standardize, and strengthen the financial governance of grants. And by setting up this system, what we want to do is there are very good organizations across Africa and across the world who actually manage their grants really, really well. And by having this standard, this enables those organizations to demonstrate against an international standard how good they are. And also, if you're an organization and you have some room for improvement, then by the whole system, Global Grant Community actually provides a roadmap, and it tells you where you are now and what steps you need to go through to be able to demonstrate your accountability and capability to financially manage grants. So it's a truly global building of trust through transparency. There are three components that make up the Global Grant Community. The first one is the standard. This sets out the requirements that you need to do. The second one is a cloud-based sharing platform. That means that enables a grantee to do due diligence or do an audit once and share it many times at the click of a button. And then there's the audit section of it, and Alex is going to talk to you more about that later on as well. How do you know that GFGP covers all the financial risks? This is a question we get asked quite a lot. The reason is it was developed in Africa. And why is Africa such a great continent to develop such a standard in? And as you can see from the photos there were over 60 people involved in workshops around Africa to actually develop the breadth and the depth of the standard. These groups started from a blank sheet of paper, and all of these groups were funded by multiple funders from around the globe, both internally in Africa and outside of Africa. So they were very well aware of all the types of questions that different auditors and different funders asked for. We also made sure that the grantors were happy, and you can see on that slide who the grantors were. So they were on the technical working group as well. And in addition, there were technical advisors and partners. It was project managed by the British Standards Institute. The African Organisation of Standardization was the oversight body that kept an eye on it. And the standard, actually, the IP belongs to them. We also had input from Humentum and the Chartered Institute of Management Accounting. And of course, PwC Kenya and Alex will be presenting later on, but they have been on this journey from the very beginning. Strathmore University at Nairobi and Accounting Standards Board. What does the standard cover? We know it covers the financial risks, and then coming out of all of the consultation with the grantees, there came 4 practice areas: financial management, which has got all the usual things you'd expect to see. It also has a fairly big section on human resources, and that includes staff development, how you recruit staff, how you manage staff. It's got procurement, and it also has governance. So without governance, the rest of it isn't as strong as it should be. One standard does accommodate all. It's not a competition to get from bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Everybody that gets certified is a winner. A bronze organization is perfectly okay if you are small and regional. You may be receiving smaller awards. You're possibly working in one location. Bronze is where you should be, and bronze is great. As the organization gets slightly bigger, maybe a small research organization, maybe receiving larger grants, and maybe operating across several locations, then moving up to silver is absolutely where you need to be. If you are a large organization, complex, you have continental activities, and more importantly, if you make sub-awarding or subcontracting to other organizations, then you need to be gold. And platinum is really there for the very large organizations that are going to be around for a long time. What about the risks that are not covered in the good financial grant practice? So these are the non-financial risks. The African Academy of Sciences has developed a series of questions in relation to safeguarding, programmatic delivery, legal and compliance, and risk management. And that is also on the portal to be answered. The most important, one of the middle part of this is the Global Grant Committee. This is the portal. So this is where, as a grantor, a grantee, you can, I've just got to get rid of my screen here for a moment. Here is a grantor. So a grantor comes along, goes onto the portal and invites a grantee to self-assess. The grantee gets an invitation, so the portal sends the grantee an invitation. The grantee can go onto the portal, can look at the grantor, and it's up to the grantee whether they accept or decline. Usually they accept. They go onto the portal, they fill in the questionnaire, they upload their documents, and only when they're happy with what they've answered does the grantee press the button, submit. And then the grantor can go on the portal and they can see what the grantee has done under their self-assessment, and they could review their documentation. The grantor might then decide to get an auditor to come in, like PwC Kenya would come in, and actually they might agree to have an audit. The grantee agrees to have an audit. The assessor goes on, they have a look at the quality of the policies and processes. They also check to make sure that they're implemented. And then if they have done all of that, they will then issue a certificate. And then along comes another grantor. The grantor wants to work with this grantee, the same grantee. They go onto the portal, they invite the grantee to show them their information. The grantee goes onto the portal, ticks yes, and therefore this grantor can see all of the documentation that had already been uploaded, including the certificate and the audit report. So you provide once and you can share many times. And my PowerPoint presentation has stopped working for a moment. I might have to get some advice from IT. Wycliffe, they seems to have stopped. Have I done something that I shouldn't have done? And this is what the certificate, I do apologize for that pause. This is what the certificate looks like. The most important thing about a certification is that it is equitable across the globe. No matter which country you get certified in, the funders should look at that and say, yes, that is exactly the same. Whether you get a certificate and you are in South America, if you are in Africa, you are in Southeast Asia or if you're in Europe. A certificate should have equal. And in order to have ensured that, 40 plus people got together as a technical working group from across Africa, North America, and Europe to develop the scheme. And then also that in order to become a certifying body or an auditor, they had to apply, and then a panel of people reviewed their competencies and their experiences and their resources before they were able to become certifying bodies. And these are our current certifying bodies at the moment. PwC there, BDO, KPMG, Crow. We've got PEM, and we've also got MIT partners in Rwanda. The countries that have adopted GFGP, as you can see, there is 5 countries to date. Once the countries have adopted it, it's much easier for the people to be able to use GFGP, but GFGP can be used anywhere in the world. Your country doesn't have to have adopted it. It just gives it more strength. And there is a global presence. There are 342 registered organizations and 890 users. And as you can see, it's starting to become a global international standard. And that is what gives it its transparency. There was some concerns at the start that the standard would not be suitable for small organizations, and it's been field tested in Kenya and also in Rwanda. And just finishing up, I'd like to thank our funding partners. And in addition, a huge, huge thank you to the global grant community of all the people, over 300 people who input into the standard, the development of the portal, and of course to our partners who've been with us the whole way through. So thank you all very much. And I'm going to now pass back to Edward.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Thank you for that. Very insightful. So next, I want to introduce Alex Nyaga. Alex is an Associate Director with PwC's Government and Public Services Group. He has over 15 years experience in the delivery of financial and administrative management advisory services to public sector entities, such as NGOs, development partners, and government departments. And using his wealth of knowledge in the international development sector, Alex led a team of consultants with the AS in the development of the GFGP standard that Jenny has just talked about. And Alex has also led and directed various large-scale organizational assignments in the wider East Africa region. So welcome, Alex. And just before you proceed, a few housekeeping rules. We'll have a Q&A session at the end, but throughout the webinar, I encourage participants to just feel free to ask questions on the chat function. This will all be collated and presented to the panelists at the end, where each will take time to respond to your queries. So over to you, Alex.
Thank you very much, Edward, for that introduction. I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you all who have joined in today, 179 of you, to listen to the Global Grant Community webinar. We are really excited as PwC and also with AAS to be hosting this program today, because it's a culmination of our various initiatives that have happened since 2016. So today I'm just going to take you through what journey it has been to get to where we are today. And then I'll also take you through what journey you need to go through if you are to become GFGP certified, and then what benefits can accrue to your organization by being GFGP certified. So as a way of a background, in 2016, a few development partners, including the Africa Academy of Sciences, grantors, technical working group members, came together with the sole mission of solving the question, how do we remove the duplication that occurs whenever we are making grants and through the grant making process? As Jenny has highlighted, there's already a lot of duplicity that occurs whenever grants are being made. So if you are a grantee, you are aware with the pre-award assessments that you have to go through, irrespective of the fact that maybe another development partner or grantor had visited your organization. At times you will find at any one time the organization is undergoing a due diligence from various development partners simultaneously. And you cannot even use the results from one development partner due diligence to satisfy the needs of another development partner. So in a workshop that was arranged with PwC being asked to moderate that session, we came with a blank sheet of paper and went through the pain points of the various partners who work in the development sector. And during that process, it led to the first step in the development of the GFGP standard. So the GFGP standard was developed and it went through some few field testings. As indicated by Jenny before, it went through field testing in Kenya, in Rwanda, and in Ethiopia. And the various feedback that was received through the field testing was then fed back into the development of the standard before it was presented to the African Standardization Organization, where it went through the various committees within ASO before it became adopted as a standard for Africa. So as we speak now, the GFGP is a standard that is already adopted by the Africa Standards Organization. Then in 2018, the Africa Academy of Sciences decided then to use it as an in-house tool that they will be using for grant-making purposes. And with them, we did some further field testings of the pre-award process. And from that experience, a need developed to come up with a scheme that would be used to standardize the way in which grantees experience the GFGP certification. So through that process, we came up with a scheme that has 303 clauses, which anybody conducting a certification of the GFGP will use as a standard guide, and that will help when grantees are experiencing the reviews by the certifying bodies that they're going through a standardized process of review. So the output from that went to a stakeholder workshop in the UK, in London in 2019, where the technical working group members, as highlighted previously by Jenny, including the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants and other certifying bodies, for example, BDO and CRO, went through that workshop, including the Wellcome Trust, and went through a detailed review of this scheme. And out of the peer-reviewed mechanism, this was adopted as a scheme that would then be used by certifying bodies to certify organizations that require GFGP certification. Then in 2019, later, the African Academy of Sciences also decided to try out this new innovation and requested PwC to undertake a GFGP pilot certification on them, which we did at the platinum tier. Then in 2020, which is the culmination of the certification process, we are happy to announce that the Institute of Primate Research in Kenya appointed PwC to undertake the first ever GFGP certification in Africa, and they successfully met all the requirements for certification, and they became the first organization in Africa to undergo through the GFGP certificate. So you might ask yourself, how can you then become like IPR? How can you get the GFGP certification? Well, the process is very simple. It's a four-step process. First, you have to go through a pre-certification process. How do you go about that? You do that by registering your organization on the GFGP portal. This can be found on www.globalgrantcommunity.org. And once there, you will follow the link and buy assessment credits that will enable your organization be invoiced to get access to this portal. And once you made the payment through the portal, you gain access to the portal. The second step would be to purchase the GFGP standard. As would be expected, you cannot be subscribing to a standard that you're not aware of. Therefore, it's a requirement for you to be certified that you purchase the standard from the Kenya Bureau of Standards web store. Once you purchase it, you'll be required to demonstrate through the certification process that you actually studied it and compared it with the standards that your organization has. The third step would be to do a pre-certification process of yourself through a self-assessment. Now, the self-assessment through the portal takes you through the 303 clauses that we talked about, where you answer either yes, no, not applicable, or in progress as appropriate to the question that you are responding to. Then, depending on the answer that you provided, if affirmative, you'll be required to provide evidence that actually those policies do exist within your organization. So you will attach the documents as well as photographic evidence for the practice implementation of such standard. Then the fourth and the final step would be to undergo through the certification process itself. Now, we do that by appointing a licensed certifying body. So for example, in this case, it could be PwC, but as Jenny indicated in her presentation, there's another list of various certifying bodies, and you'd have to go through the procurement process of the organization to determine which one that you prefer. Of course, if you choose PwC, I'll be happy. Then the other step that you'd have to go through is to go through the certification process. Jenny indicated there are 4. So first is the bronze level, which is the lowest one. Then there's a silver, there's a gold, and then there's platinum. So depending on where your organization is and where you want to be, you can then identify the standard that you want to ascribe to. Then finally, you'll go through the certification with a GFGP licensed certification body, and they will go through the clauses that you've provided and the evidence that you've provided and check whether you're compliant or you're non-compliant. Where you're compliant, automatically you will then get the certification, but where you're not compliant, then you will get a report that indicates areas of improvement and a time period over which you should then address the weaknesses that have been identified to ensure that your organization is fully compliant before you can be awarded a certificate. So you might ask yourself, what benefits are you going to accrue to your organization by being GFGP certified? Well, I'll ask the technical team just to play a short video that takes us through the benefits before I can recap. Thank you. So as a way of recap, I just want to take you through again what the benefits would be for your organization. If you got it, basically there are 5 key benefits. There are 5 key benefits for your organization. The first one would be to instill confidence to grantors. By being certified under GFGP, it enables the organization to demonstrate that you are independently certified by a certifying body, confirming that you manage funds to the highest degree as prescribed by the GFGP standard. Secondly, it provides a tool for capacity building for your organization, where it demonstrates areas where you can improve, as well as serves as a training tool to your organization for the grant practitioners that operate within your organization. Thirdly, it's a measure of accountability. The GFGP certificate is a symbol of accountability and trust, and it's a very good tool for communication material within the organization to enable you to attract further funding. As indicated, it is envisioned that in future, when it's an ISO standard, that only organizations that have this certificate will be able to get funding directly from development partners. Therefore, by being GFGP certified, you can cut the speed of trust on your organization to attract funding. Fourth, It helps the organization to gain visibility. As demonstrated, GFGP standard and certified organizations are held in a directory of the global grant community. This is an international database where organizations that have that are certified can gain access to personal, private, corporate donors or international development partners who are really seeking quick and trusted partners that they can fund. And as you can see, for example, even in the era of COVID-19, if this database was up and running to the maturity, then you can imagine for quick response, development partners would go to such a portal to gain people that they can work with. Fifth is that it's going to save time. As indicated, the bronze and silver tiers are valid for 2 years. And then for the gold and platinum tiers, they're valid for 3 years. So during this time, when you have a valid GFGP certificate, you will not have to go through any other process of certification, since the development partner will already see that you have as a valid license, and you do not have to repeat the multiple due diligence processes that usually we go through. So thank you very much for being an attentive audience. I look forward to interact with you further during the question and answer session, and you can reach out to the chat function and drop your question, and we'll be happy to respond to it at the end of this session. So I'll hand over back to Edward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. Very insightful journey towards certification and the benefits, very well articulated. Thank you again. So for the benefit of attendees who have joined after we did the introduction, I'm just going to introduce our next speaker, who's going to give us a grantee perspective of using GFGP and piloting it and the benefits that it's brought to his organization. So our next speaker is Michael Egesa. He's operations officer at Mbale Clinical Research Institute from Uganda, and he's responsible for leading the implementation of GFGP at his home institution. He's a professional accountant with an MBA and bachelor's degree in business from Makerere, and his work experience spreads over 13 years in finance and accounting. And 10 of this has been in the for-profit sector, while the last 3 years have been spent at the Wellcome Trust-supported Mbale Clinical Research Institute in Eastern Uganda. So I'd like to welcome Michael. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Edward. A very good afternoon to all almost 180 attendees. All protocols observed. I'm Michael Egesa, your speaker on the subject, GFGP grantee perspectives, implementation, standards, and benefits of the global grant community. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this webinar for having considered Mbale Clinical Research Institute, a research giant in Eastern Uganda that advances clinical research with a vision to be a center of excellence in evidence-based clinical research, training, and innovations. In perspective, the Institute started as a clinical research unit under Mbale Regional Referral Hospital in 2008, and it grew and legally became an institute in 2016. It has grown in terms of research, funders, and staff complement. It is also recognized as a research institution by Uganda National Research Health Organization. It's a Wellcome Trust-supported collaborative research initiative. In terms of leadership, it's under the executive directorship of Professor Peter Olupot, a professor of clinical and infectious disease epidemiology. MICRI has also a full-fledged board of directors. It has functional departments that are headed by departmental managers, and these under the overall leadership of operations officer form the management team that handles the day-to-day institute activities. There is a picture in that slide, and that picture just houses our state-of-art research lab, a biobank, training and conference rooms, and major offices. Mbale Clinical Research Institute is built on pillars, and these are 5. I'll just make a mention briefly of each of them. One is provision of infrastructure to conduct internationally competitive research. In here, it's about establishing outstanding information and communication services with our research partners, and also providing outstanding data application software that support integrity and dissemination of research information. The second pillar is supporting recruitment to large multi-center clinical trials. In here, there is a need to create conducive clinical research and social environment for our researchers, and develop a group of research themes and systems that advance internationally competitive science. And finally, promoting community engagement, including working with community networks to enhance research activities. The third pillar is about providing a platform for further capacity building. In here, there is emphasis on full career path with progressive and long-term outlook in the development of local research leadership, and offering relevant and research learning programs that meet the needs of Mbale Clinical Research Institute and provide outstanding research training equipment. And the fourth is on facilities. That's about completing and equipping of a research laboratory. In here, there's pursuance of a program of construction and refurbishment to provide appropriate competitive research facilities and to facilitate processing of clinical specimens across a broad spectrum of assays to storage in the biobank for epidemiological profiles, including those of hematology, microbiology, parasite culture, immunology, and molecular assays. Finally, the fifth pillar is staffing. That's attracting, recruiting, and motivating competent core staff. In here, we are to strengthen governance structures and procedures in a broad spectrum of functional areas at MICRI, thereby developing responsibility and accountability. Challenges and benefits after having enrolled on the Global Grant Community Platform. Ladies and gentlemen, before enrolling on the GGC platform, MICRI faced myriad challenges that were time-consuming and time-wasting. And these are across the practice areas that are highlighted on the portal. One was on the financial management and accountability of donor funds under the following variables. In terms of budget planning and preparation, we had issues with allocation of costs to grantors' definitions. On recording of grant income, we had issues with unique identifiers for each grant and grantor. We also had issues and problems on expenditures, especially those outside of grant conditions and allocation of indirect expenses. In terms of cash and bank management, we had issues on the segregation of duties in our online payment system, including risk management of monetary assets and liabilities. And we had processes that were inadequate for derecognition of inventories due to obsolescence and expiry. On PPE, that's property, plant, and equipment, we had issues, especially those on the management of disposal of those assets that are not able to be used by the organization. But over time, as I will explain, we brought on board through the portal policies and SOPs that helped us to do this. Then we also had issues on the permissible and travel expenses and allowances, especially for domestic and international travel. Then we also had issues on financial capacity of our sub-guarantees, in that identifying or looking after them to manage sub-grants prior to full execution of contracts. Then finally, on financial management, our financial management system had an incapacity for transactional audit trail to process completion to facilitate financial reporting in accordance with grant conditions. Still continuing on those practice areas on the portal, we had some issues on human resources and payroll management. This was in regard to employee life cycle from recruitment to exit, whether voluntary or involuntary, including the payroll with its embedded internal controls. There were also issues on performance reviews for our staff And then the entire staff development, special trainings in line grant objectives and outputs. On procurement, we had issues with contract management, where cost overruns were glaringly visible. Then final on governance, the mode of communication of procedures to our staff was inadequate, and our strategic plan holistically was also inadequate in content. Like I said earlier, still this come under governance. The grant management and compliance had a lot of inadequacies, thereby making our internal controls a bit hard in terms of internal and external audits. Entirely in risk management, we had issues with our risk register and IT security in terms of antivirus and a firewall that protects our systems. You realize we had a lot of paperwork. That is a lot of documentation in accounting to our donors and funders. We could use a lot of emails to make cases for explanations where queries arose from the donors, meaning we would also make multiple Excel sheets to support all our transactions, and different reporting was required for different donors. Then, having undertaken due diligence assessment variables on the GFGP standard across the tiers of bronze, gold, and currently platinum on the GGC platform, my organization realized the number of benefits on its implementation. We were able to make a case to our donors, and they have been able to support us to procure a financial management system called SAGE. And this, with its inbuilt internal controls, we've been able to address the financial and accountability variable gaps in the donor fund management, as I've explained before. Then on financial reporting, our reports are now customized to grant conditions and can be timely extracted for management decision making. We are also able to assure our funders that their funds are managed with the highest standards. And there is also enhanced and strengthened grant management capabilities among our financial staff at the Institute. The GFGP standard has also helped in identifying policy gaps, including those on the non-GFGP assurance framework, as shared by Jenny, one of the panelists, and these have been effectively addressed. We hope that the international visibility Mbale Clinical Research Institute has scored on the GGC platform will have a ripple effect in attracting more donors and increasing our portfolio of funds. And finally, the effective employee engagement strategies have improved and accelerated staff productivity and performance at Mbale Clinical Research Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, Mbale Clinical Research Institute is not an island in its quest to be a center of excellence in evidence-based research, training, and innovations. As you can see on the slide, we have a number of funders and collaborators. And I would really like to thank all of them for being with us in this journey and supporting us. We hope we should be getting, much as we are still under pre-certification, we hope we should be getting certified as a compliant organization on the tier that we are in now. I salute you all, my audience, for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. Very wonderful the way you've captured the challenges and benefits of implementation. That's very good. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our next presenter just before we head into the Q&A session. The next presenter is Winfred Mwasa. Winfred is a program officer with expertise and hands-on experience in digital project management and development of information systems. Winfred steers the portal development and manages the implementation of the system at the African Academy of Sciences, and also manages the upgrades as well as new functionalities that she's going to show you in a short while. And she also provides helpline support with the assistance of the team, and just to ensure grantees are able to get on the portal well and undertake their assessments efficiently. So over to you, Winfred.
Thank you, Edward, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. This afternoon, I'll be giving you a demonstration of the GGC portal so you know how it works and how to use it. So to access the portal, you do so via our website, which is www.globalgrantcommunity.com. And the website is basically a repository of information about the Global Grant Community, the GFGP Standard, the non-GFGP assurance framework, as well as certification. You'll also find in there resources on our latest news and updates, as well as how you can be able to contact us. I won't dwell much on that. You can visit our website and be able to learn more about the Global Grant Community. So we'll just go to the portal itself. And to access the portal, you do so via the top right toggle button on the website. And clicking on that button leads you to the login page, where you will be required to log in using your email address and password. If you're not registered, then you will be required to register first by clicking on the register button. And the register button is just below forgot password. So when you click on that register button, it will lead you to the registration page where you will fill in basic registration fields. I'll just log into the portal so that we have a deeper dive. Upon logging in, then you get the dashboard view, which is basically a snapshot of activities that you can perform on the portal or actions that are required of you. For example, you can be able to see whether you have any invitations pending, that is either from a grantor or another organization that would wish to view your assessment. By becoming a member of the Global Grant Community, then you get access to the directory, and the directory is a searchable database of organizations that are registered on the portal, as well as their statuses in terms of whether they have an assessment and whether they are certified or not. For example, if I search for Central Research Laboratory KIMS, then we are able to view their registration details, their biography, and we can see that they have an existing GFGP assessment and that they are certified. At this point, you will not be able to view the tier at which a particular organization is certified, as well as the details of the assessment and the supporting documents. So this means that for you to be able to view these details, then you would require permission from the grantee, because viewing of these details is subject to the permission of that organization. What this means is that for the case of a grantor, then that grantor would require to extend an invitation to that grantee so that they can accept that invitation as a way of giving permission to the grantor to view their assessment as well as the supporting documents. For the sake of the certification body, then the grantee would have to accept an audit request from the certification body so that they can give them permission to perform an audit on them by accessing the assessment on the portal. Grantees willing to assess on their own initiative can do so by obtaining assessment credits, and also grantors willing to invite their grantees to undertake an assessment to the requirements of the GFGP standard as well as the non-GFGP assurance framework also require assessment credits. And these assessment credits can be obtained under the orders and billing section. So under the orders and billing sections, we have two types of assessment packages. We have the single assessments and we have the bundled assessment packages. Under single assessments, we have the COVID offer, which is going for $100. And this COVID offer is exclusively for organizations that are undertaking COVID-19 related activities, as well as those organizations that would wish to support organizations that are hit hardest by COVID-19. So we have the bronze tier assessment going for $250, silver tier assessment at $500, the gold tier assessment at $750, and platinum at $1,000. For the bundled assessment packages, we have the low, medium, super, and high packages to suit the different needs of the grantor depending on the number of grantees that they have. For example, under the low package, we have the 10 assessments at $5,000, and this means that an organization, in that case a grantor, would be able to invite 10 grantees or partners to undertake an assessment to the requirements of the GFGP standard. For an organization to undertake a pre-certification assessment to the requirements of the GFGP standard, then they do so in the assessment section. This is via the assessments tab on the left-hand side menu options. So this leads you to 3 parts, and the first one is the non-GFGP assurance framework. The second one is the GFGP standard, and lastly, we have assessment shared with me. So this last part on assessment shared with me is where a grantor gets to access the assessment details of the grantees that have accepted the invitation, and also those that have completed the assessment and given permission to them, to the grantor to view that assessment. Secondly, we have the GFGP standard, and this is where a grantee or any organization undertakes an assessment to the requirements of the GFGP standard. As mentioned earlier by Jenny, the GFGP standard covers 4 practice areas. We have financial management, we have human resources, we have procurement, and we have governance. Basically, filling in the assessment involves indicating whether your organization has a procedure, a process, or a policy in place, depending on the tier at which your organization is assessing. For the bronze tier, then an organization is required to upload procedures. For the silver tier, an organization is required to have processes, and at the gold and platinum tier, an organization is required to have policies in place. And filling in the assessment, an organization indicates whether they have a particular policy, process, or procedure in place by choosing yes, or choosing in progress if the document is in draft and not approved, or choosing no if that document is not in place. They can also choose not applicable to mean that that clause does not apply to their organization. So upon completing the assessment, then an organization can view their summary report by clicking on this view summary button, and this leads you to the report, which is in 3 parts. We have the completion report, and this completion report shows you how far your organization is in terms of completing the assessment. It also shows you whether you have any outstanding actions, for example, any documents that you need to upload or unanswered questions. The second part of the report is the compliance report, and this is purely based on the responses provided by your organization. So it is an indication of where your organization is in terms of being ready to go for certification. Then we have the full assessment report. This is a bit comprehensive because it contains the particular responses to each question, as well as the uploaded supporting documents. So we go back to the non-GFGP assurance framework. And as mentioned earlier by Jenny, the non-GFGP assurance framework consists of areas that fall outside of the GFGP scope. And we have safeguarding, we have programmatic delivery, we have compliance with legal requirements, we have health and safety, we have IT, and several others. This assessment is filled in the same way that the GFGP pre-certification assessment is filled in, and it also involves choosing whether you have a particular policy in place, whether it's in draft, whether it's not available, or whether that question is not applicable to your organization. You can also view the summary report of this assessment. It's also in 3 parts. And the first part, for completion, you can see that, for example, here there are some actions that are required. And then compliance, in the same way, it's just based on the responses that have been provided. And then the full assessment report shows the particular responses to each question, as well as the uploaded supporting documents. So organizations can complete the assessment faster by making use of the document library. And the document library is in 2 parts. We have the first folder, which is known as My Organization's Documents, and the second one is Shared Documents folder. The first folder is the one that is crucial in helping organizations to complete the assessment faster, and it is private to an organization. Here, an organization can upload all their documents such that when they are completing the assessment, then all they would need to do is just attach those documents rather than looking for them in the PC or the computer or wherever they have saved them. Then the second part is the shared documents folder, and this consists of templates of policies, processes, and procedures, and they act as examples to organizations who do not have these documents in place. So a registered organization can download these documents. They can download those that closely match their requirements and customize them to fit their own organization. And hence, after embedding them in their operational activities, then that will assist them in their journey towards compliance. Another way to assist organizations to complete the assessment faster is by making use of the organization and user section. Here, they can be able to add as many users as possible who will work on the different parts of the assessment. So just to finish off, I would like to show you our support center, whereby you can access the frequently asked questions as well as articles and user guides that will be very helpful in your journey towards certification. I would also like to let you know that you can reach out to us via Global Grant Community at aasciences.africa. If you forget that, then you can go to the website, which is freely accessible by anyone. Under the contact, you will find information on how you can reach out to us. So you fill in these details, and then we will get your query or issue, and then we'll be able to address it. You can also reach us on these numbers, so we will be able to assist you. We have customer care team that is always in standby mode to assist you. Thank you everyone for listening in, and at this point I hand it over to Edward.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Very insightful session. So at this point, I'm conscious of time. We've just gone over the hour mark, but there are a lot of questions coming in, and I'd like to cover at least some of them, because it's only fair if we try our best to answer this question. So at this point, I'd like to invite the panelists. Please just switch on your camera, and I'll just allocate the questions to you so that you can respond accordingly. We have so many questions. I hope we'll be able to cover all of them. So the first question goes out to Alex, and somebody's asking, how long does the process take before an organization is certified?
Thank you very much. Typically, the process takes between 1 month and 2 months. Depends on how prepared the grantee is. So if they have done their self-assessment and attached all supporting documents, the process should take a maximum of at least 6 weeks.
Okay, thank you for that. So there's another question here for Jenny. Somebody is asking, are we even eligible? I only have 4 employees. Jenny, I think you're on mute.
Great question, thank you. I think if you've got 4 employees, it very much depends on what the governance structure is. But even at the bronze level with 4, and I think Alex is going to talk a little bit more about CBOs and a question very quickly. But even at the bronze level, doing the bronze certification, even with 4 employees, will give you the ability to show confidence to your funders. It also, once you're certified at that level, puts you on the portal. So I'd say go for it.
Just as a follow-up question, can an institution have more than 1 certification?
Yes, it can. As part of the consultation, some of the research institutions in Africa and other organizations, research organizations across the globe are complex. So the most important thing here is if, say, for example, you are a school or a college within an organization, you can have your own certification. So one organization may have 5 or 6 certifications, and they can be at different levels.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Sorry, this next one is for Alex. Somebody has mentioned they've completed a certification, the certification questions, they've uploaded all the requirement documents, and they wanted to pay, but could not. And who will initiate this process? Will initiate the certification?
Thank you. The person to initiate the certification is really the grantee. So the organization will need to go through the portal and identify the certifying body that they want to work with, reach out to them, the contacts are there, reach out to them, agree on the costs, and then you choose the organization to work with, and then thereafter you will engage with them and they will guide you as accordingly.
Okay, thank you for that. Winfred, there's a question here for you. Somebody's asking, what is the price of the assessment credit, and are there different prices? I know you talked about that, and also another question is, how do you access the portal? Just briefly, can you just give an overview on that?
Thank you, Edward. So the cost for the assessment credits, we have 2 types of assessment packages. We have the single assessments, and these are suited for grantees who would like to undertake an assessment on their own initiative. So for a bronze tier assessment, that is if you would like to assess to the requirements of the GFGP standard at the bronze tier, then this goes for $250. At the silver tier, this is at $500, and at gold tier, this is at $750, and at platinum, this goes for $1,000. If you are a grantor, then we have the bundle assessment packages, and the low one goes for $5,000, and this gives you 10 assessment credits, which means that you'll be able to invite 10 grantees or partners. On the question regarding whether you can register if you're not certified, right, Edward? That was the question, please.
Yes, that was the question.
Yeah, you can. The portal, the registration on the portal is free, so you can register on the portal. You'll only be required to pay when you're ready to undertake an assessment.
Thank you very much for that. So there's a very important question here. This one, Jenny, this one is for you. So what is the standard status with DFID, Western European governments and bodies, the EU, CEDA, WHO, and basically federal or related bodies that are major funders globally?
That's also a very good question. And the African Academy of Sciences and myself, we're working with a number of those funders in order to get their acceptance to GFGP. What we're finding is that most of those funders, when they're putting grant funding into LMIC countries, will make the costs of GFGP as an allowable cost. So if you're if you're a grant, put those costs on, and they can go through there. And also, there's been a bit of talk tonight about capacity building. So put your capacity building costs on those grants as well. Quite a few US AID are trialing GFGP, as Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So it's starting to get quite a lot of notice in the US. In terms of DFID were involved in the initial conception of this. Most of the funders aren't prepared yet to make it compulsory. However, a number of them have said this is the only standard that is like this, and it will only be a matter of years before it becomes mandatory for people to do. The other side of it is we already have examples of where an organization has become certified or has filled in their self-assessment. And when the funder sent them their own due diligence, the grantee pushed back very gently and said, but I've done GFGP. And then the funder accepted that and looked on the portal rather than getting them to fill in their own. So once you've got your GFGP, I would really strongly suggest you start to gently push back when another funder gives you a due diligence questionnaire.
Thank you, Jenny. Since some comments are coming in the chats, people are wondering whether or not we'll share this recording. We'll share the recording as well as all the questions that have been asked. So we're trying our best to cover as many as we can. And so the next question, over to you, Alex, as well. So what happens after the validity period of the certification expires? What happens after that?
Thank you. So when the validity period ends, we'll come and do another verification just to make sure that whatever practices were within the organization are still in force, and then we'll go through a renewal process. I also need to mention that during the course of your certification, if there is a major change within the organization that would affect your certification status, then you'd also have to go another review.
Thank you, Alex. And Michael, there's a question here for you. Somebody is asking, sorry, I'm not mentioning names, apologies for that. But the question that has come in is, just briefly, can you just talk about the challenges that you've experienced and how it's improved your organization with regard to attracting more funding, improving systems? What benefit has it brought about in your institution? I know you covered this in your presentation, but just for the benefit of everyone, just please share that.
Now I'll probably handle one as an example. Expenditures that were specifically outside the grant conditions, like one of the grantors or funders we have is EDCTP. So there are those that are eligible and ineligible on a particular grant. So issues of specifically indirect costs arise here, where they give a percentage of that particular grant, maybe 25% of that grant is not supposed to be accounted for. It's supposed to be spent at the organization, especially on indirect costs like issues of utilities, water, electricity, then probably these staff that help, support staff that help in the day-to-day activities of the organization. Such costs are not supposed to be included in accounting for particular grant income. So on the portal, when you do due diligence across the tiers, these incidences are practically highlighted, and they also they help us directly to formulate SOPs and the procedures on how to handle these indirect costs based on the percentages allocated by each grantor or particular grant condition.
Thank you very much for that, Michael. Question for Winfred. The comment is the presentations are very helpful in understanding more of the scope and potential of GFGP and how it is already being used in different countries. So is it available in any other language besides English? I think that's for Francophone and Lusophone countries. So is it available in any other languages except English?
Yes, the standard is available in French, in Spanish, and Portuguese. So organizations willing to purchase a copy of either French or Spanish or Portuguese can do so via the KEBS portal or the other organization, standards board that have adopted the standard. For example, we have Rwanda, So you can purchase a copy of whichever version that you would like to purchase, that is among French, Portuguese, and Spanish.
Thank you, Winfred. And just as a follow-up from a question, Jenny, you had been asked this question before with regard to the certifications of different parts of the organization. So can you get different assessments and hence certificates for different parts of your institution, like the health sciences faculty, and as other sections of the university?
Yes, you definitely can. So, because some organizations are very complex. They're complex within their own organizations, and sometimes they're complex across the globe. And so any part of that organization that has its own policies, processes, and procedures can be certified. And you can have some organizations, like a lot of universities, might have common policies across all of their departments or faculties, but the faculties have their own processes and procedures. They can have their own certification too.
Thank you, Jenny. Again, apologies. I know we are over time by 10 or so minutes, and I'm trying to go through all the questions. But if we don't manage to go through each and every question, just come up with answers and send a document with the recording to you. So I'll do 3 more questions, and the next question is for Winfred. So how does a grantor request to see a GFGP report on the GGC portal, certified organization? How are you able to undertake that?
Thank you, Edward. So once you're registered on the portal, on the left-hand side menu options, there is a tab for invitations. So if you have assessment credits, that's where you make the invitation to the grantee with whom you would like to view the assessment. So you will be able to indicate or rather choose the organization name, and that grantee will get that invitation. Once they get it, when they accept it, you will be able to view it from your end.
Sorry, I was on mute. Apologies for that. So Jenny, there's a question for you. Are there plans within the GFGP team with regard to collaborating with partners to roll out capacity development activities and/or grants with capacity development aspects?
Yes, there is. So quite a few of the UK funders will put capacity building in as part of their grants. And there's NIH funding at the moment, and they are now starting to fund directly into Africa. It doesn't have to be through a northern partner. I would seriously suggest make sure you put your capacity building onto those grants. There's a great question about this portal will start to get a wealth of information about organizations and areas where capacity building is needed. And it was always visualized by the African Academy of Sciences that once there is a lot more information on that portal, then that will provide valuable information to funders and governments actually about which areas need to be strengthened. So I think in the coming years, that's going to be very, very valuable information, and funders will find that very interesting.
Thank you for that. So there's another question here for you, Alex. The question is, after certification and a report is produced, indicating areas requiring attention or improvement, how are the timelines determined for those gaps to be covered? And also, since organizations have different capacity challenges, just as Michael has mentioned, how do you determine these timelines for these organizations?
Thank you. That's a good question. Typically, we agree with the organization how long they would take to address them and what capacity assistance they need to do it. But typically, because GFGP is a standard where you need to demonstrate compliance, and for you to demonstrate compliance, it would mean that you put this into practice within your organization. So where you have a major nonconformity, typically you have 6 months to demonstrate that actually, not only do you have now the policy in place, but it's now become a practice within your organization.
Okay, Thank you. Unfortunately, we need to wind up now. It's 4:21, and we're past by 15 minutes. So as I mentioned earlier, we're not able to cover all the questions that have been posted, but we'll just answer all of them offline and send it across to you together with a link and a document that has all these questions. I'll link to the recording of this webinar. So with that, I'd like to just give a vote of thanks before we close off this meeting. So I, on behalf of the African Academy of Sciences and the entire PwC team in Nairobi, MCRI in Uganda, and the Oxford University Clinical Research Network in Vietnam, the entire GGC and AS team have been supporting the preparation of this webinar and also supporting diligently throughout the last hour. We'd like to thank you, and a very hearty vote of thanks to all attendees for gracing today's webinar. Thank you for sharing very insightful questions, which we'll send across all responses. Where apologies, we are not able to answer all of them during this short period. And we look forward to engaging with you in future and to continue with these discussions. And all participants, as I mentioned earlier, will receive a copy of this recording of this webinar. And on that note, I will end this webinar. And thank you very much. Stay safe and goodbye.